Hey, welcome back. You're in the C Space Studio. I am James Kotecki, and we are at CES 2024 with none other than returning guest Geoff Schiller, Chief Revenue Officer, Vox Media. Welcome back to C Space Studio in a new capacity, in a new company, but we welcome you back.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, so Vox Media, people may be familiar with Vox.com, but I understand there's a lot of brands in the Vox umbrella. So can you first kind of just set the table for us? What is Vox Media?
Yeah, absolutely. So as the modern media company, it's predominantly digital first, although I'll talk a little bit about this. We acquired New York Media a couple of years ago, and obviously New York Magazine is print, but predominantly digital first, journalism oriented, and 18 brands, a scaled podcast offering, and generally speaking, top 10 ComScore, huge global reach and on social. I would say the big point of difference though for us is on output in terms of content and audience. Our brands are all bound by their ability to ignite culture and inspire action.
And do you target a certain kind of demographic? I think of Vox as a little bit nerdy maybe, but it's kind of explaining things in an accessible way. But for people who, it seems like when I read Vox, I like to flatter myself perhaps, but it seems like it's aimed at a relatively intelligent audience who wants a certain level of conversation about the issues of the day. So how do you think about the audience you're serving?
Yeah, so with 18 brands, it certainly varies. So Vox.com, you hit the nail on the head. Thank you for being a fan. Taking complex issues and really sort of breaking them down. It runs the gamut. You know, SB Nation is a great example, super differentiated in sports, community up. So not box scores and sort of horizontal, like here's what's happening in every sport. There are community sites. So if you're a big fan of University of Florida, go Gators, you would go to Alligator Army, one of our properties. And so that audience is obviously very unique and different versus The Verge, which is a tech audience, or Polygon, which is a gaming audience, so on and so forth, all the way through all of our brands. So back to what I said a couple of seconds ago, the thread that ties it all together is really each one of those brands, regardless of who they reach, does impact culture. And for the most part, it's creating culture, not amplifying it, which I think is a difference.
Interesting distinction. What's your message here at CES? What brings you here?
So a couple things. One is to make sure marketers know how robust we are in terms of our offering. We've acquired multiple businesses just over the last 4 years. So number one, our portfolio. Number two, our ability to ignite culture and inspire action. Number three, how we do that. Number four, obviously the collaborative opportunities. So outside of that, there is also The Verge, which if you're a tech reader and you see Nilay Patel, our EIC, walking through the halls or in the convention center, you're going to take a selfie with him. It's obviously apropos to talk about tech at CES with The Verge. So really the overarching message, but then more specifically The Verge and its position as sort of being at the forefront of a lot of different conversations.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that means then to kind of create culture? Maybe you can use The Verge as an example because we're here at CES rather than amplify it. Does that mean that there's something in the DNA of the company about having maybe a differentiated take or a specific opinion that maybe drives the conversation forward? Can you tell me more about that and how other brands how other media companies might not be doing that as an opposition?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the difference between creating culture and amplifying culture is really about spotting a trend and that is in the wild. It's consumer driven and really understanding, is that a flash in the pan? Is that a paradigm shift, and being at the sort of forefront of bringing that to mass. And that's really what mass media has done time immemorial, but we just do it all the time. So a great example, this goes back to 1980. New York Magazine coined the term foodie.
Oh.
That's something that people say at least once a day in some context.
Maybe they're mocking other people or themselves. Maybe they really mean it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Exactly. So that's a great example. The Cut is our luxury play, and so when we talk about impacting people last summer, the summer of Barbie, everybody had Margot Robbie on their covers. We had America Ferrera. So to your point, sometimes it's a different take. That created a string of conversations. Eater. One of my favorite brands, because I happen to be a foodie, bringing it back,
there you go.
has been heavily featured on The Bear. on FX. And so that ability to permeate through popular consciousness is a signal that we are creating culture. So specific to the bear, it was the folks at Eater coined the term chaos cooking, and that played a big role in season 2, where the character, the head guy, Carmi, is talking about his menu, and he said, chaos menu? So, lots of times, again, there's like the sort of delineation is subtle between amplifying culture, where it might be, oh, this is really popular, like those Stanley mugs, really popular right now, that we could write about it, that's amplifying culture. But when we're creating it, whether it's a term or a trend or a personality that's going to bubble up, that's really the difference.
You mentioned a podcast network, and I've listened to Vox Podcasting before. But I'm wondering where podcasting stands in your mind here at the beginning of 2024, because anecdotally, people might have heard like some podcasts are closing down, or some there's some contraction. Other conversations here in the C Space Studio might lead one to believe that it's a great time to be podcasting. What's going on?
Yeah, so from our perspective, we're growing. We're growing not only in terms of our network, so we just signed a couple of months ago Point Forward, which is hosted by Andre Iguodala and Evan Turner in the world of sports and culture. We signed Esther Perel, who has the Foremost Relationship podcast in Where Should We Begin? We signed Brene Brown. So we're signing new talent, we're adding on new talent, and our revenue is following suit. We believe that you have to be a scaled player, so we are a top 10 on PodTrack, but you also have to have personalities. And a cornerstone of what I'm talking to our brand partners here is our focus on tentpoles, franchise, and talent. So on the podcast side, if you have talent, whether it's Kara Swisher, Scott Galloway, anyone else that I just mentioned, you differentiate. And for us, that's been a boon.
How are you thinking about AI when it comes to content creation? Are there ethical or just good business practice kind of guidelines that are bubbling up here as far as how much you actually use it in the creation of news and the creation of podcasting, et cetera?
So AI for us right now is definitely something, to your point, we're being very careful with and deliberate and thoughtful. So in the short, we are more focused on machine learning AI, and we actually developed and released a dynamic ad creative experience that essentially, if you're on one of our 32 NFL properties on SB Nation, you might get different creative, different color schemes, different keyword in the actual creative. That said, on the generative AI side, we're trying to think of things that are actually utility driven, that are expression of creative, sort of thought, and not in the realm of what can we do to replace a journalist. We are a journalism company.
Right. I mean, it seems like, the brains of the people that you're mentioning, the talent, their individual unique takes on it, that's a lot of where the value comes from.
100%. We're fueled by our IP through that lens of talent, franchises, and tentpoles.
We're at a show, CES, it's all about different ways that technology could change the way content is consumed. And we talk about, maybe in the near future, people are talking about, showing new computers, new TVs, new screens and devices of all kinds. Anything kind of that might be out on the show floor, or just in general that you're thinking about as far as new devices, new hardware on which your stuff could appear and what that might mean for you in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me in particular, I've always been interested in smart home. I think that whether it's the palm print or facial recognition lock, things that impact your everyday.
Yeah.
And so, through that lens, not just me as a personal fan, but The Verge is actually launching a smart home hub for that same reason, because things are becoming less gimmicky, more beneficial, and I love to see that. Anything that's convenient for me, that makes my life, I don't have to get my keys out, I'm all for.
And I imagine there's ways to integrate content into that smart home, maybe in the future, where if I'm in the kitchen, maybe Eater is something that pops up, or if I'm thinking about different ways of different luxury aspects of my life, maybe the cut kind of comes up in different interesting ways, depending on how I'm moving through the home and actually living my life.
100%. And to your point, Eater at home is a huge offering for us, so it's definitely something that's on our minds.
We love having you in the C Space Studio. If you think about how things are going, no matter where you are in life at that point, what do you think we'll be talking about in 5 years?
Wow, that is a...
5 years is a long time in tech, by the way. I give this to you,
29.
as a veteran, I give this to you as a challenge.
Absolutely. So I think it will be the evolution of connection, and more specifically, we've been in this Zoom, Google Meets culture
Yep.
coming out of the pandemic, but with technology, whether it's sort of the Google came out with this new product that actually debuted at our Code conference, and it is basically like almost hologram, but better because it's in full
spatial
color.
computing, personal
exactly.
connection.
And so I
thing.
think that how will that will change the world is really going to be interesting because you talk about goggles, it's still a goggle, but if you can bring people together that it's almost real, then it's almost as good as being face to face.
Well, we're so glad you joined us face to face once again. Geoff Schiller, Vox Media. Thanks so much for coming back to C Space Studio.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah. And we so appreciate you watching us here in the C Space Studio. I am James Kotecki here at CES 2024. There's more to come, so don't go anywhere.